cultivate our motivation. Again, really appreciating our opportunity to have met the Dharma, to be able to listen to the teachings and think about them. Then let's dispel all discouragement, all of the mind that says, it's too hard, I can't do it, woe is me. And instead, let's have a very happy mind approaching the teachings. And remember that we're working for the benefit of all living beings. We want to purify our mind, transform our mind into a fully enlightened mind for the benefit of all living beings. So at the end of last week's teaching, we got into an interesting discussion. Jesse had asked the question if the high-level bodhisattvas can manifest as anything and they have this power to know about sentient beings' karma, then why don't they manifest as people in our society, for example, who could give large be very generous and give large donations to political causes and political parties that would get voted into office, and then who would work for the benefit of society. So we got into a big discussion about that. So I won't go into all the points that are raised, but somebody wrote in afterwards with their thoughts about it. One thing I thought was interesting was trying to imagine how that person would approach how would a bodhisattva approach the political process in the U.S.? On what platform would a bodhisattva run in order to get elected? You know, difficult when you think about it. Anyway, okay, so this person said, in short, that, you know, of course we don't want others to suffer, but sometimes suffering can wake us up to the reality of life. And she said, if we should work to alleviate the suffering of others without the big picture of how everything works interdependently, we can't really know if we're truly benefiting them. And this is somebody who has a long-term, a chronic illness, and who actually turned to the Dharma because of her illness. So she said, if somebody had taken away my illness 20 years ago, I might never have met the Dharma. Yeah? So we don't always know what's benefited and what's not in terms of the result that we cause the other person. But we do know that when we change our mind and when we act with a good motivation, that's something beneficial and virtuous, regardless of the effect it has on the larger environment. And then she said, you can't alleviate the sufferings of the world without changing minds. Which is so true. You can be rich and give somebody all your money so that they never want for another thing. But if they have a mind of poverty, a mind of attachment, a mind of miserliness, they might use all the money for the pleasures of this life and only create bad karma for themselves and have a gazillion bad rebirths that follow. So how is that benefiting them? True. She said, the third point was, it's great to be generous and alleviate someone's suffering here and now, but far greater to inspire that person to create virtue themselves. Okay, so generosity of the physical type is temporary, but if you can, it brings temporary results. You know, you give somebody food or clothing or whatever. It's good, it brings temporary results. But if you can inspire somebody to become virtuous themselves, then a far greater benefit is achieved that has nothing to do with being rich and influential. And we all have this ability to inspire others to become virtuous. You don't have to be rich and powerful in order to do that. And then our last point was just because we as ordinary beings think that something might be beneficial, might benefit many beings, doesn't mean that in the far vast perspective of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that these things would actually be beneficial. So our perspective is limited because of our obscurations. Okay, so I thought these were all quite good points, for why a Buddha and Bodhisattvas don't just appear and abracadabra change everything. Yeah. Aside from the fact that their being able to have an effect on the world depends upon our receptivity. Yeah, if we're receptive, many things can benefit us. If our mind is closed and shut down, even the Buddha sitting in front of us, no benefit. Okay, so last week we finished chapter 5, which was about the Bodhisattva deeds, and so now we're going to go on to chapter 6. So this whole section, the chapter 5 through 8, is about the Bodhisattva actions, and their deeds. So chapter 5 was describing them, the Bodhisattva deeds themselves. And chapter 6, which we're about to begin, is explaining the means to abandon the afflictions that prevent the Bodhisattva deeds. Okay, so we want to have Bodhisattvas are those who aspiring for full awakening for the benefit of all beings, and who have that internal, spontaneous wish. So I don't know about you, but much more advanced than me. And so, when a bodhisattva wants to really be of benefit, then what obstructs them from being of benefit? Yeah, the mental afflictions. Yeah, principally the 3 poisonous attitudes: ignorance, anger, and clinging attachment. So this chapter is about how to abandon those afflictions which get in the way of our doing the bodhisattva deeds. Yeah, so it's really true, isn't it? We may have this wish to be of great benefit, but if our mind is totally confused and we're bouncing back and forth between ignorance, anger, and attachment, then we'd have no way to put our beautiful motivation into practice. Our mind just won't cooperate. So we have to learn the ways to subdue the afflictions. So since all the samsaric dukkha, unsatisfactory conditions, is produced by afflictions and karma, then bodhisattvas encourage their trainees to put an end to these afflictions and polluted karma. Okay, so verse 126 is about refuting that polluted karma and afflictions are eliminated by tormenting the body with ascetic practices. Okay, this is a common belief in ancient India, and even in many other religious traditions nowadays, that if you torment the body, then you can overcome the body's wants and cravings and so on, and eliminate the afflictions that way. So Joe Blow, our old friend Joe Blow, who asks questions, says, "It's unreasonable to give the ordained nice buildings and food with 100 flavors, since these are pleasant and increase desire. They should avoid these. Ascetics who undergo overt suffering by mortifying their bodies overcome afflictions and polluted karma." Okay, so Joe Blow's saying, if you're really practicing as an ordained being, forget about pleasure. You should practice very extreme ascetic practices, torment your body, maybe self-flagellate, starve yourself, all these things, and in that way you will overcome afflictions and the polluted karma. So Aryadeva says, if desire increases through pleasure and anger increases through pain, why are those with pleasure not ascetics, And why are the ascetics those with pain? Okay. So what he's saying is if pleasure increases desire, and it does, when we aren't mindful, if we have something pleasant, then I want more, I want more, I want more. Okay. And so if pleasure increases desire, and therefore the causes of pleasure should be avoided, then the physical and mental pain that cause anger should also be avoided, because anger is also an affliction. Okay, so you're getting what he's saying? Like if you're going to avoid desire, then you should also do what you need to do to avoid anger. So you should avoid not only pleasant things, but also things that give rise to a lot of suffering. So he says, why are those who have pleasure not ascetics? And why are the ascetics those who torment their bodies? So he's really questioning, what is the meaning of ascetic? Yeah. Does ascetic mean physically on the outside giving up pleasure, tormenting the body? What does ascetic really mean? And the Buddha said that those who overcome afflictions and polluted karma are called ascetics, not those who torment the body. Okay? So the Buddha is pointing again that you can't say, because in ancient India, being an ascetic was something very admirable. Yeah? So, but you can't say that a real ascetic is somebody who torments their body, because they can still be filled with desire and hatred. Yeah? So a real ascetic, if you're going to respect somebody for being an ascetic, what they've given up is actually the afflictions and the polluted karma that causes rebirth and cyclic existence. So that's who the real ascetic is. So similarly, in ancient India, the Brahmins were considered the upper class. And whenever Brahmins got very proud and arrogant, we're the top class, then the Buddha would say, sorry, the real Brahmins are those who have overcome their own afflictions and the polluted karma. So he would always redefine these terms so that it's not a term of social prestige because of birth or because of what you do on the outside, but due to your own internal practice and realizations. Okay, so the Buddha did have some trainees do 12 trainings to prevent desire. So these are called Dhutanga. And so he did give them these 12 kind of ascetic practices to do, the people that had a lot of attachment and desire. But to prevent anger in those people who tended to have a lot of anger, he gave them good food, he gave them, comfortable beds, and all sorts of pleasant things. Okay, so those are two sides to training, and according to somebody's disposition and according to what's going on in their mind, you're going to give them different things and train them differently. And this is the real skill of the Buddha, is that he was able to see where people were at and what they needed. And so for the people with attachment, he worked them hard and didn't let them have pleasurable things. The people with anger, he let them have, some pleasurable things, because otherwise they would totally freak out and they wouldn't be able to practice. Okay? So what this is showing us is we should never compare ourselves to other Dharma students. And we should never say, the teacher gives this one privileges but doesn't give them to me, or the teacher makes this one work so hard but not that one. Okay? So, comparing ourselves to others is really counterproductive. And also, looking at how our teacher treats different people and noticing the differences and thinking it's due to favoritism and this kind of stuff, that's also unproductive, because of course our teacher is going to teach, is going to behave differently with different people, because people have different personalities and they need different things. Okay, one size does not fit all. Okay, and so that's why sometimes, you have monastery policies, and then there's exceptions. Yeah, we aren't dogmatic, we aren't, dictatorial. There's things that, depending on the situation and what's going on, have to be modified according to individual conditions. Okay? So this is really emphasizing that we always need to look at what's going on in our mind, in our practice, and not look around at how other people are being treated, if they have a better situation than me or a worse situation than me or whatever, because none of that is really relevant. Is it? You don't look convinced.
I've learned. It's a lot of wisdom about being able to understand and take it in our heart.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're so used to comparing ourselves to other people, and whenever we do, we come out losing. Right? Yeah. Whenever we compare ourselves to somebody else, they're better, they're the favorite, they get privileges, I'm the one who's mistreated, I'm the one who's blamed, I'm the one who's left out. Yeah? And then we just get into our self-pity mind, don't we? And we go off and suck our thumb. Poor me. What?
That's the whole point of comparing.
Comparing, yes, so I can go and feel sorry for myself.
The Buddha knew it. He gave 84,000 different teachings.
Exactly.
You read the sutras, and how come he said that? And it's,
Yes, exactly. You really see in the sutras that the Buddha said different things to different people. Yeah, because he could tune in to where people were at. Yeah, that doesn't mean that the Buddha always said what people wanted him to say. That's not true at all. Sometimes you read in the sutras, the Buddha said things and people go, why are you talking to me that way? Or, yeah.
Well, the one that went a bit like that is when he brought is it his brother?
His cousin.
His cousin?
Yeah.
To see those women in another realm?
Right, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, okay, so the Buddha, his cousin Nanda, had so much, sexual desire and was continually getting distracted from practice by looking at the women. So the Buddha took him and transported him to the God realm and showed him what the women looked like there. And after that, he lost all interest in worldly women, and he just created virtue so that he could get born in that God realm.
But what is important to see is that like that he wasn't created that karma and wrongdoing and wrong ethical conduct.
Right.
That was to...
Right, exactly, to help him, not fall prey and break to attachment and break his precepts. But could you imagine all the other monks standing around and going, look at Nanda. He just came back and he's so blissed out and saw all these gorgeous women, and the Buddha left me here. I didn't get to go. It's not fair. He took Nanda and he didn't take me. Could you imagine all the monks sitting around and complaining like that? Buddha plays favorites. Okay.
And Nanda became an arhat.
And Nanda became an arhat.
He did?
Yeah.
He got the wisdom
Yeah, he
practice with the wrong motivation. He got wise.
Yeah. And he also realized that then craving for future lives of women was equally as useless. Okay. Okay. So then also, we're not reading the Tibetan here, but there's two words for Tibetan. There's for that is sometimes translated as anger. Sometimes one is, and sometimes as hatred. One is kuntro, and the other one is shedung. So kuntro is usually translated as anger, and shedung as hatred. But actually, here they mean something very, very similar. And in many situations they do. So because, and this point is clarified here, because the word hatred, at least in English, it implies something much heavier than anger, doesn't it? Yeah, But sometimes here, that word that's usually translated as hatred is meaning what we usually mean by anger. Okay? Mm-hmm.
Actually, I've been really puzzling about this because sometimes it seems that they're used so interchangeably when you talk about the practice of patience, which is what I've been studying.
Mm-hmm.
And if I feel in my own mind sometimes, if I'm really truthful, they're very close feelings, it seems.
Mm-hmm. They are,
so,
right.
So I'm
Right.
I'm starting to wonder if it's why we actually use two different words or the wisdom of that. Or
Okay, well, in English anyway, yeah. I mean, it's true, in a lot of our Dharma teachings, you can use these words interchangeably. If we look in our mind, hatred and anger, we usually think in English that anger is a sudden outburst and it can cool and go away, whereas hatred is something that builds up and you maintain over a long period of time. And it's really deep and vicious. Okay, so in English, that's how you usually differentiate them. Okay. Then verse 127 speaks about the way to abandon manifest afflictions. And so to do that, first of all, the functions of the three poisons must be understood. So the three poisons, attachment, or it's sometimes translated as desire, greed, craving, clinging, then anger, hatred, whatever you want to call it, and then ignorance or confusion. Yeah. So we have to understand how they function. So Aryadeva says, desire's activity is acquisition. Anger's activity is conflict. As wind is to all the elements, confusion's activity is nurture. Okay, so think about it. Desire's activity is acquisition. True?
yes.
I want this, and I want this, and I want that, and give me more. Not only of physical things, but I want more love, I want more appreciation, I want more acknowledgement, I want more fun, I want more whatever it is we want. Okay? So it's to acquire. Okay? So that's the activity or the function of desire or attachment. Then anger's activity is conflict. Okay? I found this interesting. It didn't say anger's activity is to push away. That's implied in conflict, but conflict points it out much more vividly, isn't it? Because when we're just pushing away on something that we don't like, we kind of, that's understandable. That's not nice, so it's okay for me to push it away. But to think conflict, I'm in conflict with my environment. I don't like that, get it away. I'm in conflict with the people around me. This one offended me, that one insulted me, this one makes fun of me, that one is competitive, this one diminishes me, all the time. And so that mind, it's anger and we're in conflict. And so it might be the kind of anger that is jealousy or aversion or competition, or there's lots of different ways that it comes out here. But it puts us in conflict. I don't like. It should change. This isn't fair. I deserve better. I want better. The world owes me better. And I'm going to make sure the world understands that and gives it to me. Right? So we're in conflict. We're in conflict with the environment. So that's an interesting thing, instead of saying, anger's function is, to push away. Anger's function is conflict. How often am I in conflict? With the people around me, with the environment around me? I'm in conflict. Doesn't mean yelling and screaming conflict. But it means we're not abiding peacefully. We don't like. Yeah, we're complaining.
7 days a week.
Yeah, and we can be in conflict with anything. you know, the computer's not working the way I want it to work, you know. The cat runs away from me every time I try and pick her up. Yeah, I mean, we're in conflict with everything. And then just as wind is to all the elements, so wind in relationship to the earth, fire, water elements, space element, wind nurtures, it increases the functioning of those. So similarly, confusion's activity is nurture. So confusion means ignorance. It could be the ignorance that is grasping at true existence. It could mean the ignorance of not understanding karma and its effects. But both of them nurture these two other defilements. If we're grasping at true existence, if we can't differentiate virtue from non-virtue, then attachment, craving, desire comes in our mind, and we don't see it as something to abandon when we chase after it. Similarly, you know, when confusion's very prominent, then anger comes in our mind. We don't see it as anger. We see it as my right. We see it as what's fair. And somebody may say, oh, you're kind of angry. And we go, no, I'm not. I'm not angry. It's just these people are doing things the wrong way, and they need to change. We're in conflict, aren't we? Okay. So, having understood how afflictions function, then we must get rid of them. Okay? So desire's activity is to acquire people, acquire objects, acquire fame, reputation, praise, you name it. So the antidote is meditation on repulsiveness, and to see the disadvantages of attachment, and to separate ourselves from the things that we're craving and clinging to. Not in the sense of punishing ourselves. Oh, I'm going to deprive myself because I have so much attachment. Not like that. But just seeing that when we have a lot of attachment, it doesn't help us to be around the things we're attached to. Does it? You know, my example is if you weigh 300 pounds, don't meet your friends at Baskin and Robbins, because it's going to be really hard not to have any ice cream. Yeah. So the thing is, don't put ourselves near things where we generate so much of desire and attachment that our mind gets uncontrolled. Yeah, and then we do all sorts of things to get what we want. We steal, we badmouth people, we become deceptive, you know, devious, and so on. Okay, so the antidote is to think of the negative qualities, the repulsive aspect of those things, and their disadvantages. Then anger's activity is strife and conflict. Do you like to think of yourself as someone involved in strife and conflict? No. So I don't have anger. The people in Syria and in Egypt right now have anger. They're involved in strife and conflict. Yeah. The Republicans and the Democrats are involved in strife and conflict. But me? No. Ho, 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 ho. Okay, anger's activity is strife and conflict. Yeah, so maybe we're not clobbering each other or shooting each other, but we're not living in peace with each other, and we're not living in peace with our environment. Yeah, we're not accepting of what is. Yeah, we're demanding, we're complaining, we're blaming. And the antidote is love and fortitude and so on. And Aryadeva says also, you know, using some of the things that you like, not as a way of indulging yourself, but as a way of taking off the edge. okay? So being kind to yourself, that's what it's meaning, is being kind to yourself, not punishing yourself, not denying yourself, not berating yourself, okay? And then just as wind increases the strength of fire, for example, and the other elements, then confusion's activity is to nurture desire and anger. And so here the antidote is to meditate on dependent arising. Okay? So desire cannot be stopped by acquisition, can it? Satisfying the desire does not stop the desire. Anger cannot be stopped by conflict, just breeds more conflict. And confusion cannot be overcome by becoming indifferent and just disregarding things, tuning out, shutting down. So all these things can only be overcome through wisdom, the wisdom that knows how things exist, the wisdom that can differentiate the causes of happiness from the causes of suffering. Okay, then verse 128 is speaking about the reason for the need to eliminate the three poisons. So Joe Blow, our friend, says, although there are the antidotes to the three poisons, why should we get rid of them? Like, okay, the antidotes to ignorance, anger, and attachment exist, but why should I get rid of them? You know? Attachment's good. When I get the things I like, I feel really happy. Why should I get rid of attachment? Anger is good. Anger protects me. It keeps me safe, and other people can't stomp on me and take advantage of me if I'm angry. Yeah? And confusion, I just tune out when it all gets to be so too much. So what's wrong? Why should I abandon these three? Yeah? It's a good question. Many people ask this kind of thing. Yeah? And especially about desire and attachment. Why should I get rid of it? I feel happy. And with anger, they'll say other people should get rid of their anger, but my anger is good. My anger protects me. But other people who blame me and falsely accuse me, they should get rid of their anger. Right?
It's like the gun argument. I never thought of that before.
Yeah.
Well, because everybody should get rid of their if other people have guns, then I have to have a gun too.
Uh-huh.
If other people would get rid of their anger, then I wouldn't have to be angry. But because other people are angry, I have to be angry to protect myself from all these angry
People. Yeah.
Exactly the same argument.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Okay. So Aryadeva says, desire is painful because of not getting. Anger is painful through lack of might, and confusion through not understanding. Because of this, these are not recognized. Okay, so why do we need to get rid of the three poisons? Because they produce suffering and unsatisfactory conditions. Okay, so desire produces suffering when we can't get what we want, doesn't it? I want this, I want this, I want this, I can't give it, I can't get it, people aren't giving it to me, people aren't cooperating. I need this, I really need it, and it's your responsibility to give it to me, and you're not giving it to me, so I suffer. Don't I? I suffer. My craving, clinging desire makes me suffer. Yeah? And then, you know, in cahoots with this, anger makes us miserable because we lack the might to get our way. So we want our way. Desire makes us want our way, and we're miserable because we can't get it. You know, we're miserable because we're full of craving. And then anger, we're miserable because we don't have the power to control the environment and the people in it and make them give us what we want. Okay? So we don't have, with anger makes us miserable because somebody is blocking our path to happiness, and we don't have the ability or the power to get rid of them or tromp on them. Okay? And that's what we want to do when somebody's blocking our way to happiness. Don't we? Yeah? You're making me miserable. I want to get rid of you. And, or, you know, I just want to get what I want, and you're not letting me have what I want. So I'm angry, and I'm frustrated because I want this, and the world's not giving it to me, and it's telling me I can't have it. And then our mind just goes and makes up all sorts of stories, doesn't it? Yeah? These people are mean, they're denying me, people are prejudiced against me, you know, everybody hates me, nobody loves me, yeah, something's wrong with me, I'm deficient, that's why I can't get what I want, it's not fair that they have it and I don't, on and on and on, isn't it? You know the story? Okay. So anger makes us miserable because we lack the might to crush what's in our way and get our way. And confusion makes us miserable when we fail to understand a subtle matter thoroughly. Okay? So I really want to understand something and I don't get it. Yeah? So that makes us pretty miserable. Or sometimes we get into this thing of, you know, I really want to understand something. You said X, Y, and Z to me, and I'm really unhappy about what you said, and I want to understand why you said it. Yeah, and we're miserable because we can't understand why they said what they said. Yeah? Or you threw sand in my face, and I want to understand why you threw sand in my face. And so I'm angry and I'm miserable because I don't understand. Yeah? Is understanding why somebody threw sand in our face going to make us alleviate our misery? Is understanding why somebody insulted us going to alleviate our misery? Is it? You know, we think, why did they insult me? If I only understood, why are they saying no? If I only understood why they're saying no. And then so we feel frustrated, and so this is how anger causes us suffering. But is understanding why somebody said what they said or did what they did going to really alleviate our confusion and our pain? Yeah. It doesn't, you know, it really doesn't matter why somebody did. We always have this thing of, you know, I gotta understand why they did what they did. But it's very interesting, I mean, because Dharma really teaches us to question everything, to stop and say, well, why do I need to understand why they did what they did? Why? How is that going to help me? Well, then I'll understand. Well, so what? Yeah? Huh?
Keeps you focused out.
Yeah. It keeps you focused out. I have to understand them. When the question is, I need to understand me. Why am I angry? Why am I offended? Why am I jealous? That's what we need, the question we need to ask ourselves. That's what we need to understand. But confusion keeps us linked into, I have to understand their motivation. But who cares what their motivation is? The problem is my response to the situation. That's what the problem is. If I'm responding with desire, anger, confusion, I'm in misery. Regardless of why they did it, they could have done it with a good motivation, they could have done it with a bad motivation, but as long as I'm holding on to my interpretation and taking everything personally, I'm going to be miserable. Yeah. One thing, you know, if somebody did something we don't like, one thing we do know, why did they do that? Because they're unhappy. Or because they didn't have all the information of the situation. That's why they did it. We don't really need to know anything more than that. Because they didn't have all the information. Because they're unhappy. Yeah? So the real thing is, why am I responding this way? Okay, so the inability to recognize these forms of suffering when we're overwhelmed by desire, anger, and confusion is the great suffering. You know, and I really stopped with that one. When we can't recognize that when we have attachment, we're suffering. When we have anger, we're suffering. When we're confused, we're suffering. Not understanding that and constantly being focused on the external world and wanting it to change, that's the biggest suffering. Because when we're focused on the other person and why they did what they did and why this and why that and what the situation is, then we are giving away our power. We're saying, my happiness depends on the rest of what's going on outside. I have no power to make my own mind happy. And that's the greatest suffering, isn't it? We're totally giving up our power. You know, I can't be happy until these people change, until what's ever going on in the situation around me, until it changes, I cannot be happy. And we make that decision, I'm not going to be happy until it changes. And then, like I was saying in yesterday's BBC, then we punish the other people. You know, you're making me unhappy, and I'm going to be unhappy. You know, and we walk around all day like, I'm unhappy. You know, and we may not say it, but the implication is, I'm unhappy and it's your fault. You should feel bad because I'm unhappy. We're really good at manipulating, aren't we? We're very good. Yeah. So the thing is, we're all responsible for ourselves. Yeah. Somebody else may be unhappy because of what we said or did, but that doesn't mean it's our fault that they're unhappy. We have to look at our own motivation. If we acted with a good intention, or at least if we didn't act with a bad intention, even if the other person is upset, we don't need to, you know, feel bad about anything, because we were working from an honest position in ourselves. If we weren't working from an honest position in ourselves, then we need to do some purification and confession. But otherwise...
Can you state that sentence again?
Okay. The inability to recognize these forms of suffering, in other words, from ignorance, anger, and attachment, when we're overwhelmed by desire, anger, and confusion, is the great suffering. Yeah. And we can see that over and over and over again in our lives, can't we? Again and again and again. When I am miserable, why? Because I'm thinking it's coming from outside. And I'm thinking that I'm, not just that I think it comes from outside, but I think that I'm powerless to change the experience. So I'm giving up my power. I'm not having confidence in my own ability to transform my mind. And so thus I don't try. I just say it's all useless, because anyway, it's somebody else's fault. I can't be happy until they change. So I'm just going to be miserable. So who suffers then? It's clear, isn't it? It's clear who suffers. Yeah?
And being miserable is always a sign of manipulating?
No, it's not that being miserable is a sign of manipulating. Being miserable and giving the subtle, unspoken message that it's the other person's fault and that they should feel bad because we're unhappy. That's manipulating.
But it's not necessarily the case.
What's not necessarily the case?
That the subtle manipulation is in it.
No, we can just be unhappy and sulk by ourselves. Yeah, but we're usually, when we're unhappy and sulking, I don't know about you, but when I'm unhappy and sulking, I'm putting out this subtle message that it's your fault. You know. It's somebody's fault. It's not mine. That's the point. It has nothing to do with me. I'm the innocent victim. I can't do anything to change my mind. I can't do anything to change the situation. It's all overpowering me, and I'm, you know. And somebody should change it all. Okay. So, yeah, we fall into that a lot, don't we? All the time. Okay, so that's why we try and help each other. So, there was an example, and I can't understand all of our, Gelsimche's examples, but this one. So there was a poor man who had a lot of desire for a queen. Okay, he saw her, thought she was ravishing, he had a lot of desire. But the king guarded the queen very well. And so because this man couldn't get her, his desire made him suffer. Clear. He was angry at the king for guarding her, and since he couldn't harm the king, you know, and get rid of the king, then he suffered more because of his anger. And then blinded by desire and anger, his confusion grew, and unable to understand the situation properly, he was tormented by suffering. Good example, isn't it? Yeah. All three poisons in one situation. Then verse 129 is about antidotes to anger and desire must be applied individually. So Joe Blow says, do anger and desire occur together the way confusion occurs with both of them? So we were just saying that confusion can occur with anger, it can occur with desire, but can anger and desire occur together? And Aryadeva says, just as it is seen that bile does not occur with phlegm, one sees that desire too does not occur with anger. So in the Ayurvedic medicine or Tibetan medicine, there's three elements: bile, phlegm, and what's the third one? Anybody know? I can't remember. Bile, phlegm, and... Oh yeah, wind, of course. Yeah, wind. Duh. Yeah, so bile, phlegm, and wind. So just as bile and phlegm, you know, don't occur together, so anger and desire don't occur together. So they don't occur simultaneously in manifest form in one person's continuum. Okay. However, yeah, you can go back and forth between them. Yeah, I want this, I'm angry because I can't get it. I want it, I'm mad at this person for not giving it to me. Okay? So we can go back and forth between anger and desire, but at one single moment in one person's mental continuum, they can't appear at the same time because they're holding their object differently. Yeah? Desire is holding the one object that it's seeing as attractive. Anger is holding another object that it's seeing as unattractive. So their objects are different and their mode of apprehension is different. Yeah. Okay, so because they don't occur simultaneously in a manifest form in one person's mental continuum, okay, one has the aspect of longing, the other has the aspect of aversion, so they have to be treated differently. Okay. So, now we get into some really interesting things here as we're going along. So verse 130 is how to treat students having desire and anger. Okay, so we just said that you treat desire and anger differently. So the question is, okay, then how do you treat students who have desire? How do you treat students that have anger? Okay, and here it's talking, I mean, everybody has both desire and anger, and of course confusion, but here it's talking about mostly people who have a preponderance of one versus a preponderance of the other. That's what it's talking about. So Aryadeva says, desire should be driven like a slave because severity is its cure, and anger looked upon as a lord because indulgence is its cure. Yeah, rather than indulgence, I would say kindness is its cure. Okay? So, understanding the characteristics of desire and anger and how they function, a spiritual mentor who is training students makes the students who are inclined more towards desire, makes them work very hard, like slaves. I mean, this is not really like slaves, okay, but makes them work very hard. And this is because severity and a lack of deference can cure the desire. So if somebody has a lot of desire and you pamper them and give them what they want, their desire is only going to increase. If somebody has a lot of desire, if you're severe and you say, look, you have a lot of desire, this is, making you create all sorts of negative karma. It's making your mind terribly unhappy. And you're severe in that way. Yeah, and saying, no, you can't have everything that you want. And you can't have respect. And not like you're deliberately denying people, but it's like you're not, I want respect, I want honor, I want money, I want comfort, I want. And so for a student that's like that, then the teacher says, sorry, you're not getting. Because that way it makes the student realize how much, we're assuming it's Dharma students here, that would make somebody who's heard teachings recognize, oh, it's my desire that's making me miserable. Okay, so you're getting how this works? The teacher's not making the student miserable. They're assuming that the student has heard teachings, that the student is thinking about the teachings, and not just in one ear and out the other. So that the student will see when they're not getting what they want, that the problem isn't that they're not getting what they want. The problem is that they're so full of attachment and desire, and their attachment and desire and longing and greed are making them miserable. Okay? So, the teacher makes that kind of person work very, very hard. Okay, so you don't pamper those with attachment. Yeah. However, the angry, people who are really angry, who are very bad-tempered, who are extremely difficult to get along with, you are very kind with them. You don't make them work very hard because they're already brittle and they're going to break. Okay, when somebody's very angry, they're brittle, aren't they? They can't endure much. They're going to crack. So you treat them nicely, you give them things, you treat them respectfully, not in the sense of pampering and self-indulging them, but you don't put them up against their desire because their anger is too strong and they need to work on their anger first. Okay, you understanding? Is this making some sense to you? Okay. Okay, so so it doesn't mean that we should be afraid of somebody who's angry, like, oh, you know, I'm afraid of them and I've got to give them whatever they want. No, that doesn't mean that. And it also doesn't mean an angry person can control the environment. Yeah, because you do set limits on angry people. Otherwise, I mean, they just control the whole environment and make a mess. But it's saying that you don't push angry people to the edge because they can't bear it. Yeah? People with a lot of attachment, you can push them, you know, to that edge so that they realize, oh, it's my craving that's, you know, making me so miserable.
But it's not craving that is behind the anger, attachment?
There's often a lot of attachment behind the anger, but the anger is the one that's chiefly manifest. So of course, all these afflictions all relate to each other. We're not saying that. And everybody has all three of them. But when you look inside, can you see one that is stronger inside of you than the other? Okay. What's stronger for you?
I used to think it was a attachment, but now my anger is getting bigger.
So maybe at different times it's anger, and different times it's attachment. Okay, how about for you?
It used to be, I thought, attachment too, but it's definitely anger.
Okay, yeah, you?
Anger.
Anger?
No, I'm not angry. Let me think, I think.
Okay.
Anger.
Yeah. Okay, how about you?
I don't know yet.
Now you gotta think. You can't just say, I don't know. You gotta look inside.
I don't know, I'm looking at it.
Okay, so you gotta look inside and let us know when you find out which one is stronger. How about you?
Attachment.
Yep, you? Attachment.
All of the above, but attachment.
Yeah. Attachment? Huh? Attachment? Attachment? Okay. Okay. Get out that sledgehammer. Let's make them work. I used to think it was anger, and now it's going more towards attachment. Used to be very much anger.
So is it all going to be like that? Like, we think it's anger, but down the road is attachment?
We have all three of them. So at different times, one may be stronger than the other, but we may just kind of more easily go into one than go into the other. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. So, yeah?
So what's the difference between holding people dear?
Holding people.
Memories dear,
Okay, holding people dear, holding memories dear, and being attached to them. Holding people dear means you value people for who they are and you wish them to have happiness and its causes, whether you are the source of their happiness and its causes. Okay? And you want to extend that holding them dear to as many people as possible, because when we hold people dear and it's exclusionary, then it usually is based on attachment. Okay? Holding memories dear usually brings us into attachment. We want to recreate the past. We've created a bubble of an ideal world or an ideal something, and we want to go back to it. Yeah. I think more to replace that would be holding dear memories of times when we've really learned a lot. So instead of clinging to the person or the idea or the place or the experience, you know, which we can never duplicate again, yeah, just thinking, oh, what are times when I have learned a lot, and cherishing those times. Okay, so Gyaltsev gave a story. Okay, so a washerman curbed his donkey's spirit and keeps him busy. Yeah, so the donkey has a lot of attachment, so the washerman keeps him busy. And, you know, hauling the clothes here, hauling the clothes there, doing all these different things. So anything capricious that the donkey does, he considers a fault and beats him. Okay. Similarly, the wise deliberately keep those habituated to desire busy. And when they do something wrong, they make them go on working. In other words, they, you know, when they're full of desire, you just get them to see where their desire is taking them. Okay? But when the washerman takes his donkey home, he treats him like a lord and gives him lots of fodder, because the donkey at that point is tired, he's going to get angry, he won't get up the next morning. So the washerman treats him like a prince and gives him lots of fodder and pets him and everything. So too, spiritual guides treat those habituated to anger, you know, in a nice way. But having said that, it's very difficult if you're trying to treat somebody habituated with anger nicely. It's very difficult to be successful. It's not difficult for you to be successful in treating them nicely. It's difficult for them to feel like they're being treated nicely. Because somebody with anger, even if you're treating them nicely, they don't think you are. So it's very difficult to please people who are angry. No matter how many backflips you do, they're going to be unhappy. Yeah. So you try and treat them nicely to keep them calm and, you know, calm enough to get them, help them to see that their anger is a problem. But it's difficult for them to actually feel okay, because they're always like unhappy about something.
I have to say that sometimes I wonder why you're so kind, and a part of me doesn't like it. I feel like I'm not good enough, I can't take it. Why she talks to her and Chuni and all that, but not me. And my mama's like, for me it's like, you're not good enough to take it. That's where my mind goes.
So do you see how we always depreciate ourselves? And no matter what it is, we make it ourselves something negative. Yeah. If you were treated well, oh, it's because I'm not good enough to take it. If you're treated badly, oh, it's because I'm so bad that they treat me that way. You know, whatever you do, you lose. Yeah, whatever you do, that person, you can't satisfy them. And you can't make them feel good about themselves. Whatever you do. Yeah?
Well, it's out. Okay.
So then what's the point of the advice?
To help that person to be as happy as they can be, so that there's some space in their mind to reflect on their anger and to see how miserable their anger makes them, and to start to oppose their anger. Whereas if there's an angry person and you push them and push them, it justifies it, and then they crack, they run down the hill, they can't take it anymore. You know, you're against me, you're doing this. Okay? So you need to kind of, but like I said, it's impossible to please them. Totally impossible. They're always angry at one thing or another. Yeah. But you do your best. Okay. Oh, I think we have to stop. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, it's impossible for somebody else to please someone anyhow. You know what I mean? It's like no matter what your disposition, you have to do the work inside to find the ease and the peace in your heart.
Exactly.
Irregardless.
Right. Yeah. Regardless, people are mean, people are kind. We all have to do the work in our own heart. Yeah.
But I know that part of living in community here for all that self-defeating inner dialogue is that even after starting to change some of the patterns, I still didn't trust my own growth. So I had the community giving me reality checks that actually said, what you're saying about yourself is no longer true. So even though, so I needed that feedback because I still wasn't seeing that things were changing in a positive way.
Yeah, so you weren't confident in yourself, but hearing it from other people helped you to become more confident. Yeah.
I think that also shows how this takes a long time.
Yeah.
It takes a really long time. And then I think I'm just starting to see over, I don't know, I've been here 6 years, I think, finally seeing that there actually has been some change that's really change. But it's so slow and subtle, and it's not the way we think it's going to be either. It's internal and glacial.
Yeah. I want to get rid of all my problems like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway.
Yeah. But that's why His Holiness says, don't just look back last month or, a few months ago. Look back a year, 5 years. Yeah. And you can see the change.
But like the treatment of a teacher, when somebody is angry, doesn't mean that necessarily you have to be kind in the way how we in the first moment interpret kindness. Because my experience I had here was when I had anger, I didn't find that the treatment was kindness in the way that I received, I don't know, something what I expected, what I should receive, like kind words and support.
Right.
It's more than a very long-term view of a decision that made me think differently or supported me.
Right.
But not how I was expecting. And I was expecting kind words and support in a direct way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, we expect kind words, make me feel good, kind of, yeah, I need it, lay it on. Yeah. But that's not necessarily kindness. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes the kindness is to challenge us and to intervene and say, yeah, you can do better than that. That's the kindness.
I have to say too, since I've been sick, I've been reading Reverend Jude Kinnick's autobiography. My goodness, we have it so easy
Yeah.
compared to the Zen training and what she especially received.
Yeah.
So just the power of what appears to be very, very harsh training and the power that it had an effect in her mind is something to also think about.
Right.